There ain't nothing more powerful than a mama's love. What's up, guys? I'm Hunter here, and here we are to do a breakdown and review of chapter 146 of Four Nights of the which is known as Love Melting Curses Like Ice. And ladies and gentlemen, if this ain't the chapter, I don't want to make you go hug your mama or your mama figure in your life. I don't know what will. Golly. Nagaba really said, them heartstrings, I know they're yours, but aren't they really ours? And decided to pull at every single one of them. So you know we got a hefty, defty, no lefty chunk to talk about. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact. Have I ever told you that Sixtus was him? If I haven't yet, he is, and he's going to be. But I am slightly worried. I'm a tad concerned. Mainly because I don't know what these things are. This is the main thing. I'm a little bit concerned. I'm a little bit concerned. What are they? Presumably they got to be weaker than Kagon, right? And I've seen theories that hypothetically they could be the commandments, but I feel like that there's too many. The number's too inconsistent for it to be the commandments. And they're a little bit too tiny and too consistent to be. But then someone brought up the idea that it could be Grey Road. Because Grey Road never actually perished. They were kept by Merlin. Just like Molaskil never perished. It was kept by Merlin. And knowing Arthur definitely would be the kind of guy to rip out all Grey Road's faces and put them in individual hoods under Kagan's control. And the Grey Road, they weren't the strongest, but they weren't the weakest either. And while Sixtus is clearly him, something smells like a setup. You know what I'm saying? You ever take a whiff of something and be like, this is a setup. I feel like Sixtus is being set up. He's looking a little bit too Himothy right now. Ironically enough, out of all the Cayenne kids, he's low-key getting the Lancelot treatment right now. But unlike Lancelot, who is a titular character, Sixtus has 6, arguably 7 other siblings. And Nasians has to get that spirit sword somehow. I don't know. I'm worried for brother. There's a little bit too much mystery. There's a little too much mystery and not enough history with Sixtus. And we don't have enough information on these things. So I'm a little bit worried for bro. I'm a little bit worried. But I'm going to have faith in the GOAT, Sixtus. I'm going to, as the cool kids say these days, let him cook. But with that being the case, let's actually hop right into chapter 146, Love Melting Curses Like Ice. So, we immediately open up with King being like, I typically don't do things like this within the fairy realm. You see, my abilities, as beautiful and amazing and as powerful and transcendent as they are all the things I just said. And thusly, the scale of my attacks could vaporize the entire realm before I realize what happened. But you dear dual dragon-headed freak that decided to wander into my territory, manipulate my beloved son, and truly decide to cause me havoc today? Oh, I've got something special for you. Spirit Spear, Chastival, 4th form, Sunflower. Here's the thing. There are definitely, you can make arguments that realistically the strongest form of the Spirit Spear is still the first form, right? The way we've seen it, it can sometimes, depending on its user, transform into a beam, launch a beam, or be launched so fast it appears like a beam. And it seems to do crazy amounts of damage. But at least to me, out of all of King's forms, the ones that really felt like they were meant to do big damage every single time they appeared, this was meant to be a round start or round ender. This is the Slobberknocker that had people running. Creatures of extreme power, dipping and diving, running out the way. It was Sunflower. The biggest example that comes to mind is when King, for the first time in his full wing state, pulls out Sunflower on the original demon. And the original demon, who has full counter, has absolute cancel, has things in his kit that should be absolutely able to deal with Sunflower, took one look at it and was like, oh no, and dipped out immediately. Because even it was like, Something's up with that. So, you know, King is downright furious if he's opening up with this bad boy in the fairy realm. Because people brought up a fantastic point in last week's chapter. They're like, well, pencil, you gotta think logically here. The main reason King likely isn't pulling out Sunflower is because if he were to use it, sure, he would vaporize all of Kagon and his men, but at the same time, Sunflower is such a massive, big AoE kind of attack that he wouldn't just vaporize Kagon and his men, he'd probably vaporize half the darn realm. And that's accurate. But King does not care, which I do like. Once again, King, out of all of the original cast of titular characters, the original Seven Deadly Sins, he is one of the more balanced of the seven. I'd say, like, he's in the basically dead middle of the extreme emotional types and the kind of low-key crazy ones, and the more nonchalant, relaxed, either hiding things or oblivious type. He's like the dead middle. I'd say the hiding ones / nonchalant and oblivious ones are like Diane and Myrtle right beneath King, and then Gother down there with them, and then you have Meliodas, Spawn, and Escanor being mostly chill, but actually insane. King's definitely the middle ground, but all of my favorite moments from King in the original series are when he tweaks out a little bit. Just like when his people are threatened, whether it's his family, whether it's his friends, when it's people he cares about, when they're threatened and put in danger and he needs to get stuff done, and he locks in just like this. I'm thinking of all the way back in season 1, when he straight up, after the entire battle with Helbram, low diff Dreyfus, and Dreyfus was like, whoa, I see why he's called the Fairy King. He actually low diffed me. That's insane. I'm thinking of King when he showed up chasing Gother, and Gother's like, whoa, your gains are immaculate. Why are you this strong, and why is it concerning me? And Gother had to run away. I'm thinking of when he first got them full wings, and he really had Mael, 4 Commandment Mael, being like, oh, sweet mother of mercy, this guy's actually beating the brakes off me. And of course, the original demon. So seeing King generally crash out a little bit on his Meliodas type beat, on his Escanor type beat, on his Bond type beat, I love it. It goes to show how insulted he is that Kagon really thought he was that guy. That Kagon really thought he could waltz into his realm, use his son as a means for his quest for the La Droga de Yor and get away with it. Bro immediately said, I'm going straight to vaporization. I'm skipping piercing. I'm skipping impalement. I'm skipping petrification. No, you will. He's like, think about it. King, despite what he does, was going to slaughter Kagon here. I'm confident. He was not holding back. Well, he was holding back a bit, as we'll see. Because, like people mentioned last chapter, King likely wouldn't go all out for the sake of the realm. And this is the case where we see it. He summoned Sunflower, the 4th form. And I will admit, I do kind of prefer the mini-wing King Sunflower, like the one that was like really, really big and he could like control the individual vines, like throw them up and then fire off the little individual beams. I do prefer that Sunflower a bit more design-wise than this one, but this one's obviously more powerful because it's from Full Wings King. However, this does show an aspect of that Sunflower where all King does is fire a single tiny beam from it. Remember, Sunflower is typically like huge, especially this Sunflower. When we see it used on the original demon, which I think is the only time we see it in the original series, because yeah, every single time King fights after, I think maybe in Cursed by Light. Once again, I haven't seen Cursed by Light in a while, so correct me if I'm wrong there. But I think the only time we see it is against the original demon. It's literally a gigantic laser blast that like detonates a whole chunk of the Camel area. But here, or at least attempts to before Zol just comes in and no-sells it. But with that being the case here, he does what the second Mini-Wing King Sunflower does, where it's just like a single beam, but the impact point causes this massive explosion. Which once again goes to show King is tweaking. He's going full out with vaporization, but he's not fully wilding out. He still has the realm's best interests in mind, so he only does this much, which is still massive. Kagon's not tiny. And this is Kagon. Kagon's smaller than my cursor. He's like 2 cursors big. This is just the impact from one tiny beam from this smaller Sunflower. And it does that much. And notably, Kagon, you kind of trash, bro. No perfect cube, no nothing, because we see Kagon hit the double casting, magic shield, and magic shield. Double casting, dragon style, and dragon style. So they set up this dual-layered, double-casted Chaos Staff amped boast. And of course, I'm not sure what kind of multiplier the Chaos Staff does give. I'm assuming it's probably inferior to the Sacred Treasure Multiplier, but still, it should be pretty decent considering it's a staff infused with Chaos Magic, and we know any weapon implement drastically multiplies your magic. But they do this. They double cast both spells. I'm not sure what Dragon Style does, but presumably it's something to increase the potency and durability of a shield. They do all that, and King, while holding back, and remember, the more Spirit Spears there are, the weaker they are in potency, just in general. So King, while holding back to not destroy the realm he's in, or at least do major scarring damage to it, and having a whole separate Spirit Spear being maintained, remember, Tiorate and Gnostians are being contained in a Spirit Spear form right now. So this is a Spirit Spear at likely about half its potency, if you just assume every single time it splits, it's kind of like a Lost Vein scenario, except instead of taking half the power, it's just the full power being split amongst the spears. A King with a half-power Spirit Spear, while holding back, does this much to Kagon, who's amping themselves with Chaos Magic and double casting of 2 different spells. He still does that much. If that doesn't go to show you that Nakaba's not backpedaling, I'm not sure what will. Because I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. I've made a whole video talking about it. I love the fact that the sins aren't just being talked about as these next level monsters, these animals, these creatures, these beasts that were unstoppable and crazy and demonic and another tier. But no, they're genuinely being presented as like, no. There's a reason why Arthur said, do not fight them. Under no circumstance are you meant to fight the sins. It doesn't matter if you run into Gother. It doesn't matter if you run into, well, admittedly, I guess it didn't matter if you ran into Gother, because look at what Beltaribe did. But like, Ironside, you run into Bond, you run. Because he'll wash you. And a Bond at 1/10 of his strength still washed Ironside. King versus Kagon right here. Kagon seems to be like the main new royal mage. He seems to be that guy, at least relatively speaking to Arthur. He seems to be the main mage from what we've seen so far now that Merlin's left. But even he can't do much against the overwhelming power of King. Diane doesn't get to flex this chapter, but she gets to flex in a completely different way that I think is worth it. But still, Diane, she's another one of the sins. You don't mess with her. Meliodas, we saw him cooking. While mentally anguished, nerfed, and holding back drastically, he was still cooking. So the sins, they're still up there. They're still top tiers. The only one that's put the sins on any sort of remote fraud watch is Gother, but I think that's mainly because Beltripe needed a hype mechanic, and why not hype him against the one person outside of Meliodas who you can chop up with basically no consequence. Well, yeah. Oh no, Gother got sliced in half! You can replace Gother's body parts. And you can replace Mel's too, but Mel can't get into the Camelot realm. So you can't really show Beltripe off without him invading Leonis. And then, like, if he invades Leonis, I don't think he's beating Mel. I still think Mel's that guy. But with that being the case, I love the level of power and scale that King is at. And we see that Kagon, I mean, I'm not going to say they tank it, but they do live, which is impressive. It's a testament to Kagon's durability. Even if that is a suppressed, holding back, half power Spirit Spear, singular Sunflower Blast. A little whip from the Sunflower. The fact that Kagon lived that at all is pretty impressive. And we see they're like, oh my god, I can taste colors. Oh, I should be able to taste colors. Oh, why does red seem spicy? And we see that King is like, I'll be completely honest with you. Since you most likely won't survive this next attack, this was foolish. Idiotic. I can't even begin to figure what was going through your poor excuse for your two-brained self. This was not a smart plan. There. You did well to cajole Myrtle, to break into the fairy realm beneath his shadow. But this is where it ends. Did you really think you could seize La Droga de Yor from the king of the fairy clan? And like, of course, I know some people will be like, well, King's talking mad tough here. He's talking like he's that. He is. He is that. Like I don't know. Notably, I get it. King's not a deity. That's one thing. He may be on the level of deity, especially with like his scaling to the Prime Demon King. He just had a bad matchup against the Supreme Deity, who pretty much hard countered everything King had to do. And he's typically a mage specialist. He doesn't really have physicals, but like for all intents and purposes, as powerful as the fairy trees imply to be, even though that is the deity for the fairy clan, realistically, King, he's nothing to sleep at. Whether he was just the fairy king or whether he was one of the seven deadly sins, yeah, what was the strat? What was the strat at all? It is crazy to think that Kagon really thought this was the play. And like, sure, I'll give him credit. They lived. One attack. So far. So like, they aren't doing too bad. But at the same time, unless you got a teleport spell ready to get up on out of here or something, even if you got King to expose the Drogadeor, you would have to somehow take it from him. Like, you would have to pry it out of his hands. And I don't know, Kagon, you just don't seem like that guy. However, we see Kagon goes on to explain, and you think you can undo the curse put on Myrtle without the Drogadeor? The turtle head, it really be talking mad smack. I hand knock his hustle. It really be yapping. But hey, as a fellow yapper myself, I can only respect the hustle. But with that being the case, we see that King is like, what in the... He is strong of heart. I know he will break the curse you put on him. Which, one thing, there are multiple things to that. One, I do like that King has so much faith in his kid. He's like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if there's one thing I have faith in, it's the idea that my son will beat y'all. It's not, it never was and never will be that dude. He's got y'all number. He will break free. I know him because he's my son. He may not be my biological child, but he is strong of heart. I love that shows how much faith that King has in Myrtle as his legitimate child, even if he's not his legitimate child. He knows he raised Myrtle well enough, and Myrtle is a kind enough and a strong enough soul who's strong enough of heart that he'd be able to overwhelm any curse, even if it was inflicted by chaos magic itself. He'd be able to overcome it. That's great. One thing I'll admit, and here's the thing, I do get it. It's kind of like it's a sacrifice you're going to just have to make when writing an antagonist group. But I think due to the scale of Camelot and the many different types of antagonists, by introducing Kagon, this is Nakaba essentially soft telling us anybody and anything can be a threat that serves Arthur. So he's opened the door essentially. But with that being the case, I am hoping for some more complexities, some more people who aren't willing to go down this route, some people who do have some sort of morals as they work for Arthur. Not necessarily another Pelgard. I think Pelgard serves a very unique narrative role, a very unique narrative function that I don't necessarily want to be spread out to everybody. Pelgard being basically an ally from the inside who only works for Arthur because Arthur provides something to his wife that he can't get anywhere else, and he's not willing to make his wife, I don't know, go to therapy and work through it. I think that's fine. But I do hope we run into people who aren't like Kagon, like a genuine person who, when met with somebody who has a wish they want granted, will do everything in their power to grant it without manipulating them, without putting a curse on them, without beguiling them and using them directly. Because once again, I think to some certain degree, especially if you're a reader of the original series of Seven Deadly Sins, you're supposed to want to save Arthur like Meliodas does. You're supposed to tell that something's up, that there are genuinely good people in Camelot that are fighting for their own reasons. And sure, it's completely okay to have Mortlocks. It's completely okay to have Ironsides, to have Beltripes. Once again, we don't know enough about Beltripe, but it's presumably to have Beltripes. It's fine to have the typical, like, I bad, and I don't care about other human lives that don't pertain to me because what value do they have? It's fine to have that, and it's fine to have Killbagons, people who are willing to manipulate for their sake and their sake alone. In this case, La Drogadeor, and they're using a fellow human who felt abandoned and betrayed by their own people. Yeah, like, it's fine, but I would love to see how our cast and crew would deal with somebody who's like, no, I'm just generally trying to help. Camelot's the way. The fact that you all are denying people this, doesn't that make you mad? That you're denying people their dreams? Especially when I'm not going about it in any sort of suspect way. Like, don't get me wrong. Killbagnon, doing what Killbagnon does for Killbagonn's sake, makes sense. It's the transactional agreement, right? Like, I'm willing to manipulate others for myself so I can get the world that I dream of. A world where I'm accepted as a lizard person. or a dual-headed lizard man. I'm accepted amongst my people. Even if it is a fake world, even all that, I was promised that world. I can get that world if I do what Arthur tells me to. So I'm going to do what Arthur tells me to. That makes sense. Perfect sense. I'm not knocking that. But I'm hoping for an inch, a whiff, a taste, a bit more complexity for characters who have that same belief, have that same issue, but are unwilling to compromise on their morals, would be unwilling to manipulate other humans in the way that Kilbegon's willing to, for the sake of their ambition. A pure believer in Arthur, essentially. Not Pelgard, who's a believer in what Arthur can provide for others, but doesn't necessarily care for himself. No, a pure believer in Arthur, who believes what Arthur can provide, specifically for themselves, and refuses to compromise their morals and how they treat other humans, or heck, even the other species, but probably just humans for the sake of the whole Camelot Chaos argument, in order to achieve their goals. That's what I'm hoping for. Because once again, the way this curse functions and works, it makes some of the messaging from the chapter ring hollow, but at the same time, how this chapter ends will make the tolls of the bell that the chapter rings ring true. So it's a 50-50. With that being the case, we see that ultimately, Kilbegon's just honest. He's like, doubtful. What I cast works on his very mind. It's a craving curse. Anyone caught by it cannot be freed until his most fervent wish comes true. And do you know Myrtle's wish? He detests his human body. He wants to be a fairy or a giant, like his siblings. But it will never come true. He is human after all. Thus, only Latrogadeor can remove this curse upon him. So, it's essentially a catch-22, right? Like, one way or another, you either have to beat Myrtle, or you have to grant Myrtle's wish. But since Myrtle's wish is impossible, you just have to feed him on the Droga de Yor to hopefully get rid of the effects of the curse. But, in the end, I guess Kilbegon's banking on the idea that no matter what, based on their understanding of Myrtle, and their willingness to manipulate him and how they view him, which I do think is good. I'm going to talk about how I like how Kilbegon's lack of depth and understanding of Myrtle, just willingness to use him as a pawn, does end up biting him in the butt later. But, with that being the case, Kilbegon, what if King just slaughtered you and all of your subordinates? What if he did just revert Sunflower to a lower state, into that, like, large plant, multi-armed state, and then just threw them all up and vaporized all of you? Like, dog, he could legit just slaughter all of you and then take care of Myrtle. Like what part of do not mess with the 7 deadly sins was not clear? Like I don't know. Maybe there's like a contingency that I just don't know about. Because once again, I don't know the upper limits of Kilbegon's magic. He seems to be an infinitely worse mage than Merlin, but so is everybody else. So maybe he did have some sort of contingency for a contingency of a contingency. But like, I don't know what the thought process is. King could just slaughter every last one of you and then handle his son. Realistically, let's be completely real. I'll even skip a little bit ahead. I'm gonna keep where is it? The Spirit Spear. Pollen Garden. Worst comes to worst, he could literally trap Myrtle in one of those, let him while out in there, and then just wipe everybody else. Wipe all the opposition immediately. And what are you supposed to do, Kilbegon? And then he could give the Droga de Yor to Myrtle just fine. Unless Myrtle, like, maybe there's a contingency set up within Myrtle. Maybe the curse of, what does he call it? The curse of, a craving curse. Maybe the craving curse has some sort of extra effect where if the Droga de Yor were to be given to Myrtle, like, instead of helping Myrtle, it would, like, immediately transport to Arthur or something like that. Maybe that's it. But other than that, I don't know. Kilbegon's plan seems dumb. I'll be completely honest. It feels like, bro, just regardless of whatever hypothetical setup he had, it feels like Kilbegon played himself. Because King could just wipe them all. And once again, I'm just talking as if King is alone here. Diane could most likely also just wipe everybody. Hers would be a lot more destructive, but let her pick up Gideon. And start Gideon up everywhere and just washing everything in existence. She could just do that. Diane is her. She is. So I don't know. I feel like Kagan very short-sighted. However, we see this does seem to get King in a little bit of an okie doke because he's like, Myrtle. So he is worried now. But I don't know. I think Kilbegon's still another one or two mini Sunflower shots away from being absolute ash. And I don't know. He don't seem like he built like a demon or a goddess or anything like that. I don't think he got healing magic like that, for real. So while Nanashi was able to heal through Lancelot's Shining Road, I don't think Kilbegon will be able to heal through another couple of Sunflower shots. But who knows? We'll cut back to this battle another time. Because now we cut over to Myrtle genuinely tweaking out. And like, don't get me wrong. I'm something of a tweak artist myself. You know, no, I'm not. I mean, I was about to be like, you see, back in my day, I also used to tweak it. No, I didn't. I'll admit, I never did. Never got the appeal of tweaking. I was just never for me. I was a gentleman. But with that being the case, we see Myrtle hit the and he just swings on his mama. Now, Myrtle real lucky that Diane do love him, because Diane would not stand for this kind of disrespect from any other individual. But we see Myrtle does hit the he sends that whip arm out and just, well, I guess it's wrong arm. That was the left arm. He sends the whip arm out and just smacks Diane. Notably, a detail that I do like, though, it's weird that I like it, but it's a detail that I like. He's only going for Diane. Once again, while I do think Myrtle and his little storyline here does suffer a bit from, you know, Spider-Man 2 syndrome, where a lot of characters' negative emotions and actions are not actually their fault, for real, it's actually the evil thing controlling them. And it removes a lot of the character agency, and thus makes the conflict a little bit less interesting, because you know it isn't fully genuine, which is a big issue Spider-Man 2 has when it comes to a lot of the symbiote stuff. I do think, ultimately, it goes to show that deep down, within his core, within his soul, Myrtle still cares. Because, like, he's able to damage Diane. If he really wanted to. Zana, Zillion, Pow, Belt. If he wanted them cooked, he could have cooked. He easily could have cooked them. But no, he's very specifically focusing on Diane. And it's not like Diane has raised any earthen walls to guard her kids or anything like that. They're standing behind her. But, like, Myrtle could easily just move and aim to slash any of them. Force Diane to do something else. But he very specifically attacks Diane. So at least, once again, me reading too deep into everything, welcome to I Got the Pencil. I like to believe that's a bit of, like, the real Myrtle deep inside. Being like, I do not want to hurt my family. I can take this out of my mom because I know my mom's strong enough. She won't fall to this. I can maybe make her hate me, make her despise me, but I can't beat my mom. Once again, I think Myrtle, to some degree, and just like all the kids, I think to some degree, understand how powerful their parents are. I think this is Myrtle's own way of rebelling against the craving curse placed upon him by the Chaos Staff, where ultimately he's resisting the very urge to harm those who he could actually harm. And note, once again, he's focusing just on his mom. The real object of his hatred, the real thing that caused this massive spike in insecurity that allowed him to fall to the craving curse in the first place, is right behind him in the Spirit Spear. He could just be attacking that, trying to get rid of Nonsians, but no, he's specifically attacking his mom. Because Myrtle is a kind soul. He's still a sweet kid, no matter how much that darkness and despair has gotten to him. But with that being the case, we see him hit Diane with the whip, boom, boom. And we see that Diane is like, you know you can't hurt me. And I can very easily hurt... No, she doesn't say that. But she says, Myrtle, I know you don't want to do this. Which we see... I do like this detail, too. I think this, like, burst here, and the way the veins pop out, and the way he gets even more grotesque and mutated. Once again, it goes to show that the real Myrtle doesn't want this. As he was confirmed in his heart reading 2 chapters ago, like, no, he doesn't want to make his mom and dad sad. He doesn't want to hurt them. But once again, that chaos magic, the parasites, the demons in him, they want to make him hurt his family. Reject them. Really let all that negativity consume him. And do all this devious and dastardly damage to them. Because they deserve it, right? They're the ones who left them behind, right? They asked for this. Because how could they betray him like that? Like, once again, I think there is a basis, just like in Spider-Man 2, there is a basis for a lot of the critiques and issues that the symbiote brings out of people and that this chaos magic is bringing out of Myrtle. But would they actually act like this? Absolutely not. And we see Myrtle even goes on to deny it when faced with the fact that, dude, this isn't you. You're not you and you're hungry, Myrtle. Here, take a Snickers bar, Dior. we see he just keeps on swinging, keeps on attacking, keeps on mutating and developing and getting even bigger. Note how here he's only about half the size of Diane, like barely up to her pelvis. But here in this next shot, after this seeming mutation, he's now directly at her like chest level. That's a pretty big leap. Remember, Diane's 33 or like 36 feet tall. So to go from about her waist, which would be about 18 feet, to about her torso or her chest, would probably be a solid like 27 feet. He grew 9 feet in an instant from the craving curse just amplifying all that negativity, drawing it out of his depths like that. And we see that now that he's been reaffirmed, where the first hit barely did anything, this second hit actually does manage to draw some juice from Diane. And we see that Zillion naturally asks the question, Mom, why are you using heavy metal? Because she's very clearly worried for her mom. And under complete context and in that scenario, I would be too. Like, notably, I don't have anybody who would be foolish enough to attempt to harm my mother. But if there were, yeah, I would also be a little bit perturbed, be a little bit wondering, especially if I knew my mom had the capability to fight back and she just wasn't. I'd be like, what is you doing? What you cooking, mama? But we see that they ain't gonna wait around and see, because Diane does not answer. And Zillion turns to Zana and hits the Zana. And Zana immediately turns to Zillion and is like, I got you, Zillion. And they both book it on out of there. And Belt's like, what's the word? What's the plan? What's the means? What's the metric? Where are you two going? And they just book it on out of there, running away. And hey, to be fair, if one of my older family members was generally tweaking out because they found out they were adopted, I'd also probably run, unless they were hurting my mom. In that case, we could have fun. But with that being the case, putting that aside, we do get to see that Diane just genuinely apologizes. She says, I'm sorry, Myrtle. I know it's hard for you. Knowing the truth and all. If we could, I don't know. I talked about this in the live reaction, which is 30 minutes long. You can check that out over on the Patreon for as low as $1 a month. You can remember for as low as $3 a month to check out the 30-minute live reaction. But in that, I kind of covered the idea of phrasing. I don't know. Something about these passable chapters. They always have like these extra little sentences that kind of just like make the character seem a little bit insincere. Like, you could stop it at, I'm sorry, Myrtle. I know it's hard for you. But like, she says like, knowing the truth and all, like, you know, it's got like, it has the same phrasing of like, yeah, I ate your last Snickers bar. I know you're not you when you're hungry and all, but like, I don't know, it reads that way to me. Even though I know it's genuinely sincere, and like, it's Diane genuinely acknowledging that, you know, Myrtle now knows the truth and that bothers him because it's confirming a long-held fear that he had, that apparently his parents were allowing him to feed into and believe and stuff like that. So I can definitely understand why, ultimately, Diane says it like that, but just the way it's phrased doesn't necessarily hit right. But we see that Myrtle, now that it's just been fully affirmed, he's genuinely tweaking, as he says, so you admit it! And he reels back with that mutated left gigantic whip arm and just boom! Beans Diane straight across the face. And Diane is like, I'm sorry, but I don't know, something about this whole, like, don't get me wrong, I get why she's doing it like this. It's one thing going to show that she's willing to take it, and I do think this is a interesting and really nice way to go to show how Diane cares for people. And it is honestly a genuine continuation of her character from the original series, an evolution of it. From once a friend and an ally to a mother, this is how Diane has kind of always handled situations like this. When someone who she cares for is going through something, is in hurt, is in pain, is in agony, she's the kind of person who's more than willing to put her life on the line, put her body on the line, to risk it. I'm thinking of all the way back with Gother, when Gother was having his whole revelation about Nadja, which he had locked away for so long. Diane was willing to put it out there and risk and get close contact with Gother to make sure he didn't hurt himself and didn't delete himself. We see this all the time with King and Meliodas and the many different times, heck, even with people she barely knows like Gila and Zeal, all the way back in season 1, where she was willing to put her life and body on the line for these people that she cares for, or she feels like should be cared for. Diane is a genuinely good person. So her doing this, her sitting there and taking all the agony that Myrtle has felt expressed physically like this, it goes to show her resolve, her willingness. Because let's be real, if Diane wanted to stop Myrtle right now, no Gideon, if she wanted to, she could. Once again, as much as I'll glaze Myrtle for being able to damage Diane at all, and a verse like Seven Deadly Sins where I'm pretty sure it's hard to, if not flat out impossible, to lower your durability unless you like actually have transformations, I think it's pretty clear that Diane is multiple tiers above all of her kids, including this Chaos Ant Myrtle. If she wanted to mollywop them, she could. But that's not what this is about. It's about Diane accepting the fact that she made a mistake not telling Myrtle the truth, not being more upfront with him. She made a mistake assuming that Myrtle would be able to go throughout the majority of his life and just accept the rumors, accept the falsehoods, accept all the pain and agony that would come with that. She went through that, made that mistake, and is now accepting the punishment for it, in a sense. If that punishment comes in the form of physical retaliation, she's willing to go with that. If that's how Myrtle wants to express himself in this moment, she's willing to meet him head on. And I think that's amazing. And we see, well, don't do that. Don't let yourself get hurt for other people. But with that being the case, we see Tiore is generally worried. She goes, "Mom!" And Nasians is trying to force his way out of the pollen garden. He's like, "How can we get it?" Well, sorry, I'm so used to saying Nasians as a he. They say, "How can I get out of this?" And we see Tiore admit, "You can't. It's one of the Spirit Spear's forms. Only Dad can turn it off." Which, that's my boy. I'm so proud of my boy. Look at my son. Look at my son. But with it being the case, I say my son like this man isn't 1,300 years old. But with it being the case, we see that Myrtle, you know what? I'll talk about it now, and I'll go into it a bit more later. Man, for what feels like it's meant to be a Nasian's arc, in a similar way to how the previous little section felt like it was mostly an Anne arc with Donnie accent piece and Sylvan accent piece and Pelgard accent piece, Dawn Nasians has been sideline. Like, bro has yet to win a single fight, isn't allowed to participate in one of the biggest familial revelations. Like, man, bro just keeps getting sidelined horrifically. I don't know. Like, knock him, but please give him some. I still can't get over the fact that he lost. I got absolutely bullied and body bagged with a Ceranos amp, bro. That's That's actually insane. But with it being the case, moving away from Nasians being absolutely sidelined in what should be his own arc, we see that Myrtle goes on to say, "Years worth of service, lip service you've given me, and now you abandon me the moment your real son shows up." Which, once again, isn't true, but I can see how Myrtle will interpret it like that. And once again, I do fully understand Myrtle. Do I empathize with them? No, but I can sympathize with them. I was lucky enough to grow up with my biological parents, as far as I know. Plot twist? I don't know if there's a plot twist waiting for me. I don't know if like I'm gonna hit a certain age, my parents are gonna be like, "Plot twist, you were adopted." But like I think I resemble enough of my family, and I do believe that I'm generally their kid. But with that being the case, all that being said, I can definitely understand the fear that would sink into your bones. The imposter syndrome that you've been warding off year after year after year after year after year. Ignoring the countless consistent questions. Are you really the king and queen's kid? Are you really? You don't seem like one. You don't have any of the abilities like one. You struggle like a human would. Are you sure? Like, that kind of life, that kind of pain, that kind of mentality that could have once again easily been solved with just a conversation. Even if it would be a hard conversation for King and Diane. Something that could have easily been solved with a conversation. They just never did. Yeah, that would definitely make somebody feel a certain type of way. And I can understand Myrtle feeling that type of way because of how much faith he had in his family. And being, in his mind, rejected and abandoned like that, it's gotta be haunting. It's gotta be something so dark and all-consuming that he could never consider the fact that his parents could have reasons behind it. Why would they? Why would they let him suffer like that? Of course, he never said anything. He never asked. He never wanted to give into that delusion or he wanted to stay delusional and hope that what he had long since assumed was not true. But at the same time, yeah, the onus is on the parent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying King and Diane are perfect parents, nor that they handle the situation the best. But at the same time, Myrtle he didn't handle this the best either. Giving into chaos, giving into that darkness, even if it was not fully of his own free will, that's not a good thing either. But that's what I like. I do like that about this conflict. This is a conflict that is admittedly born of contrivances, but it's contrivances that make sense with how the characters are established. That's the best kind. When your story is built around characters and not characters being forced to mold to a story. Write as many contrivances as you want. This is good character drama. And we see that Zana and Zillion come back, and Zillion goes, "Mom!" And Belle's like, "Where the heck did you girls run off to?" "Nani desu. Is that Gideon, Mom's sacred treasure?" There's something so inherently adorable about seeing them drag. I don't know. I get they're like probably like 16 or 18 or whatever their age is, but like that is so adorable. Seeing them struggle to drag Gideon about because it's so much bigger than them, which is crazy. It goes to show how big they are or how small they are relative to their mom, despite being giant hybrids themselves. But like, I don't know about y'all, but I do actually own a metal Mjolnir. It's not like perfectly accurate to the movies, I don't think, but it's close enough. It's heavy enough that I know if I were to, I don't know, place it somewhere in a home and a hypothetical child of mine were to attempt to lift it, they probably couldn't. And they'd probably be forced to drag it around like this for a while until they're like probably 5 and could like lift it up, hopefully. But that is what that reminds me of. Just like seeing, it reminds me of me. It reminds me of me, and it's like especially like any of my cousins that were around my age. Whenever we try to help our parents, and we were like, "This thing's really heavy. We can't really carry it. We kind of have to drag it along." That's adorable. I don't know, that like awoke a childhood memory and tickled a place in my heart. Bro. I don't know, something about seeing them carry Gideon like this is hilarious and sweet. But we see is that Zana's like, "Mom, do what needs to be done. Beat the brakes off of him." And she says, "Mom, you've got to use this now. Teach Myrtle a lesson with it." That got dark. But, gee, like, okay, Zana, talk that talk. But once again, I do understand. That's a strange thing. Just like I sympathize with Myrtle, I can definitely sympathize with Zana here. Like, sure, that's her older brother. She knows that is her older brother. But right now, her older brother's tweaking out and harming her mom. Yeah, of course you want your mom to fight back. like that is a scenario that makes sense. I would want my mom to fight back. I wouldn't want her to just take the pain, especially over something that really isn't her fault completely. So, like, I can definitely understand why that was Zana and Zillion's thought process. Get the weapon. Maybe that'll help mom fight back. Maybe that'll help reinforce mom one way or another. Anything to help mama. And I can understand that. I love my mama too, so I can understand their thought process there. But we see that Diane simply says, "You know I can't do that." And we see Zana's like, "But Mom, if this keeps up, you could be cooked." And we see that Myrtle keeps on cooking. He goes, "Do you hate me now? Does it hurt? But my heart's been battered and beaten far, 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 far more." Myrtle, once again, he's lost in that chaos sauce. That curse of cravings is really driving out that negativity, driving it up, getting him jacked and juicier, and really having him slap up and beat up his own mama a bit. And once again, it's sad. It's rough to see. And once again, I do kind of wish we got a little bit of internal heart monologue. Like, we get enough of it later to show how much Myrtle really regrets this. But, like, internally, I wish we could know, like, what his true self is screaming. The agony it's going through that he's harming his beloved mom like this. Because, like, you know, he's in tears on the inside. And we see that ultimately, Chori, once again, a phrasing issue, she says, "Just stop it. Mom's gonna perish. No, I'm seriously concerned for her." So what did it take, Chori? You were only somewhat concerned, softly concerned, remotely concerned for her before. Now it's serious. Now you gotta lock in. You gotta be seriously concerned for her. I don't know. Once again, it's just the phrasing of the translation. I don't know. It's probably just a me thing, but like phrasing means a lot. Phrasing means a lot. Not just in a scale like this, but also in a character sense. So it kind of just fits into Chiori being more like childish or uncaring about scenarios like this, which is kind of funny. But we do get to see that ultimately the kids don't know. They don't know their mama like that for real, for real. Like, I do like that though. I do like that. It's kind of like goes to the whole idea of like dad lore and mom lore, or like guardian lore. I don't know. At least this is something that exists in my family. I've heard enough people talk about it on the internet. The idea that like your parents, they were people before you. They were like people who went through phases, went through youth, went through young adulthood, went through general adulthood, and then had you and have gone into parenthood. And like, in some cases, they were nerfed and or buffed by parenthood. My dad got dad strength, but apparently he lost half his Mamba mentality, according to my family. So, they don't know the truth. Myrtle could never take down Diane. Myrtle could likely swing on Diane all afternoon. And she'd barely, like, she's definitely a bit bloodied up here, but I don't think she's in any real danger. But the kids don't know that. They don't know. By the time they were born, their mom hadn't had a serious fight in years. Even if Nasians was popped out and Myrtle appeared the moment, like King and Diane, the second the Supreme Deity got, they just went, and boom, popped out Nasians. That's still years. Since Diane has had a real fight. So, they don't know the truth. And I love how that's portrayed here by Diane just casually walking through Myrtle's onslaught. And we see that Diane just begins to talk. I want you to listen. She begins to walk forward, step by step, piece by piece, through the assault. No heavy metal, no nothing, just flesh and bone, as she walks towards her corrupted, chaotic son. And we see she gets within range as Myrtle cries, Stay away! If you hate me, just abandon me and run away! Once again, all Myrtle's fears being projected, but none of the truth. And we see Diane simply gets close enough to Myrtle. And once again, Myrtle got a little bit bigger, but he stopped. He can't swing his arm anymore. Diane's in range. And Diane hits him with the classic, the most powerful ability this side of the Mississippi, the Mom Stare, which has a 50% chance to inflict paralysis. Same turn that it's used. And Myrtle got hit with paralysis. And thusly, Diane moves into her second move of the turn, now that the Pokemon battle has progressed, and uses Vice Grip to give Myrtle a hug. And pull him into her motherly embrace. And we see Myrtle once again. You can see, and I do like the detail that you can see the chaos magic genuinely fighting, right? Because once again, presumably Myrtle's internal real soul is screaming, yelling, trying desperately to stop hurting his mom, to really give in and try and protect his family again, be the good boy he always wanted to be the prince he always wanted to be. And you can see that by how the veins, he's not stressed, his body's not doing anything, but the chaos magic is trying to force more out of him, rip and tear more and more rage and anger and hate and denial and regret from him. But he just can't. You see him go, let me go! And he grips onto Diane. He digs his nails into her arm, but that's all he can muster. We see Diane say, on the day we had our first child, we fell victim to a changeling crime. I want to know, not gonna let us know, who had the gall? Who had the... Can I say that? It's a TFS reference. Can I say that? Who had the alls with a B at the start of that? Who did it? Who did it, and are they still alive? Like, did they at least find... I don't know. That is so crazy. Who had the gall on the day? No, they say the day they had their first child, when Nasians was born. So Nasians was fresh out and got swapped out. That is crazy. But we see Diane explains that, and she says, we all searched so hard, but we never found our child or your parents. Which hypothetically does make sense. Remember, it's hard to remember because we saw the map like once, but the Fairy King's Forest and Echo Gorge are on opposite sides of Britannia. Opposite side. Like, they are straight all the way across the map. And I don't blame King and Diane for not really finding him. Because once again, he was a baby. He probably barely had any magical signature that could be recognizable. And who knows how far away the fairy captor got. If they had teleportation magic, they could have gotten even farther. So I can understand why King and Diane definitely couldn't find them, especially considering the information that they had at the time, which was basically zero. And Diane continues to explain, I was shocked, inconsolable, not because you were human, but because our own newborn child had vanished on us. And that's the big thing. I do respect and understand that. A lot of people have been giving King and Diane flack for not telling Myrtle and like holding up this lie and stuff like that and being so worried and partial to Nazi and stuff like that. But you gotta realize they are literally centuries old. Literal centuries old. They were waiting for the longest time to have their children, and their first child just gets stolen from them. Like, I don't know. And I don't know about y'all. I know apparently I'm like a big softie. I'm like a massive sweetheart baby. But like, with that being the case, whenever I meet any of my baby family, any of my baby cousins and stuff like that, whenever they just spawn in, I still remember holding, especially like recently, like a baby cousin of mine was born 2 years ago. I remember holding her for the first time, and I was like, yep, I'd sacrifice my life for you, gosh darn it. And that was just a baby cousin of mine. I can't, if I'm lucky enough, and I have my first child, I'm going to do my darndest to give that little baby the world. I'm going to do my darndest. And imagine that. But instead of being able to give that child the world, they are swapped out at birth the same day you had them. You waited the 9 months with your beloved wife, or you are the mother. Even worse, I had to imagine. You were the mother of the child. And just out of nowhere, they're stolen away, spirited away, the same day you have them. That would be heartbreaking. That would be horrifying. Heck, I would have flipped the entire fairy realm upside down. I'm shocked the fairy realm still exists. I would have leveled that whole darn thing. You know, every single fairy would be interrogated. Every last one of them. I make examples out of something. Like, I don't know. I would genuinely crash out. So, like, I give credit to King Diane for not completely crashing out. And thusly, I excuse a lot of their actions. But of course, I'm biased because I like King Diane. But let's continue. Diane explains, but as we raised you, our feelings changed. We saw... Now, this is weird. I'll admit, this is weird. I'll get into it. It's like, we saw it as God wanting us to have you instead. And we knew the child King and I had was being raised to be just as kind as you, somewhere else. So, question, what's God in the context of their universe? Like, there are many different interpretations of gods and God in our world already. But like in the context of the Seven Deadly Sins universe, where Diane has participated in the slaughter of 2 separate gods, what does she mean? Like notably, I could understand if she said the word fate or destiny. Like, you could literally rephrase the sentence as, we saw it as destiny wanting us to have you instead. We saw it as fate wanting us to have you instead. But the moment you put God on it, what do you mean? Who are you referencing? And notably, this isn't the first time that God has just been brought up. There's a whole species called the Goddess Clan. I know you're not praying to them, because you're friends with the Goddess Clan. You're friends with their strongest person, in Elizabeth. And you met Mael. You know they aren't all good. And I highly doubt you mean Chaos, your current top op, who you know is your current top op. So what do you mean? Like, I don't know. It's something intriguing. It's another concept that's in another series that I review on a weekly basis that I'll also tackle in depth when that time comes around in its own video. But I don't know. This is like the 3rd or 4th time God has been mentioned in the Seven Deadly Sins context. But specifically, I feel like this wasn't mentioned at all in the original run. It's exclusively being mentioned at least 3 or 4 times in 4 nights. So I wonder if that's going to wrap around. If there's going to be like a legit supreme being in the Seven Deadly Sins universe that like governs fate and destiny and all that. I don't know. It's especially weird considering like the whole context of the original series is like defying the gods, defying fate, defying destiny, and going against the grain to make your own future, make your own path. But regardless, that aside, that's just a weird little detail that stood out to me. We see that Diane explains, the child king and I was raised somewhere else, just as kind as you, somewhere else. So now this is the big one. So we wanted you to have a healthy life here in the fairy realm. That's why King immediately gave you La Droga de Yor. Look at that. And look at how Myrtle's eyes burst open. Tiore's shocked. Oh, he did? And even the rest of the kids are like, oh, he did? I told you. Here's the thing. I'll admit, I wasn't fully in the camp that King gave it to him, but I was in the camp that King knew better. That it wasn't going to do anything. As Diane says here, but it didn't work. Because of course it didn't. As we see, Diane explained, La Droga de Yor has the power to heal illness and break curses, but it couldn't transform Myrtle into a fairy or giant. So, that's the thing. La Droga de Yor was worthless in the context of Myrtle. He just was human. That's a biological thing. There's nothing wrong with Myrtle. In fact, Myrtle's probably one of the strongest humans we've seen for a guy his age. Obviously not strong like Gilthunder or Hauser at his age, but still. He's that guy. And I'm so glad Nakaba has beat the bad parent allegations for King and Diane. That they fully did their best. They tried to raise their child the best way they could. They tried to help him out in whatever way they could, using a resource as rare, one that only shows up every 1,000 years. And remember, King is only 1,318 years old. That's a lot. But still, he's only 1,318 years old. That means one thing of the Droga de Yor has spawned in his lifetime, and maybe whatever was saved up from previous fairy kings over the 3,000-year time skip. There's not going to be another spurt of this stuff for another million years. Not a million, another 1,000 years. So that doesn't show how much King loved Myrtle. I don't know what will. So I'm happy that Nakaba quashed this. King gave it to him, but it did nothing, because of course it wouldn't do nothing, because Myrtle wasn't actually sick or had a curse or any illness on him. Beautiful stuff, beautiful stuff. I love it. I love what this does for King Diane too. This does also soft confirm that King was laying it down with small Diane. Alright, so like any of the imagery of canon of true size, King diving in that pool down there, that didn't happen, which doesn't make more sense. But I wonder if she can still do this. Is this something that she has easy access to? Does Myrtle still supply her, or is she just out? Like, can they no longer have kids because of the size difference? I don't know. But with that being the case, we see that Diane explains, I'm sorry. What we should have done was spare no effort to track down your parents for you. But at some point, we just gave up on it. On returning you to the human world. Which is interesting. Notably, I think she apologizes kind of for the wrong thing here. Once again, it's not necessarily her fault that, a changeling plot happened to her. I think she should apologize for not telling Myrtle this truth sooner. But still, that apology does make sense in a way, because maybe Myrtle would have been happier without all the expectations, where he was raised amongst his own people and stuff like that. And maybe they should have looked harder, but they grew to love Myrtle and care for him and see how sweet and kind of a soul he was. So they were willing to make that sacrifice and raise him and give him the responsibility and the faith and the trust that would come of that. And ultimately, I do think that's sweet. It's a tragic tale to the story. It's a tragic little aspect to it, but it's a tragedy that only adds to it. The idea that they could have maybe kept looking, maybe kept trying to track down his parents, but who knows? For all intents and purposes, with Nasians being confirmed to have grown up an orphan, just randomly appearing one day outside of Echo Gorge, it's entirely possible that Myrtle's family's dead, or abandoned him, and wouldn't have wanted him back in the first place. So, ultimately, Diane and King guaranteed Myrtle an infinitely better life at the cost of the convenience of living and the need to consistently consume Mullen pills. But still, healthy living is healthy living, and love and affection is something that Myrtle got. And you can see that in his eyes, which is finally regained their pupils. He's finally woken back up. And we see Diane just drops the final bar. After all, this whole time, you were Mom and Dad's very own child. King and Diane loved, and still do love Myrtle. And I think that's so beautiful. They genuinely do love and care for that boy. And you see the tears streaming down Diane's face as she smiles. And I think that's beautiful. And we see Nasians have the revelation and the realization. They're like, oh. I think it's finally all clicking in their head too. They're like, oh, like I think Nasian is undergoing the revelation and probably rethinking how he tackled the whole situation with King now that they have full context for it. So I'm interested to see how that conversation goes. How Nasian is going to apologize, considering we do get an apology from a certain someone else. But we see Zana, Tiore, Zillion, Pao, Belt. I'll even be nice to Pao. Pao, no, I won't. We should have sacrificed Pao. But with that being the case, we see that the curse is broken. The claws retreat and retract. Really? I don't care what I am. I just wanted to be you and Father's son. I just wanted all of us to be family. Myrtle, crying tears, snot dripping from his nose. And we see Zana wiping tears, Pao, Tiore smiling with a tear. Zana, you see she's fighting, but she's blushing, got a little sweat drop. And Belt's just like, oh, sweet mother of mercy, big bro. Why you gotta be like this? Real. You gotta do all this family drama, now we gotta heal her. And we see that ultimately Myrtle does apologize, holding on to his mother's finger. Mom, I'm sorry. And Diane smiles. Myrtle, thank you for coming to us. And the situation winds down. So now the only two issues that need to be resolved are Kagon himself and his Chaos Staff. Because who knows what Myrtle's after effects are. Because once again, we still don't know. He was reverted back to human, so maybe the curse is fully gone, but you never know. And also Sixtus in his little battle going on. But Diane got to play a role. She got to play a fantastic mama role. And man, this shot up my appreciation for the character a whole bunch. It's not fighting. It's not combat. There's no Gideon. But this, if there was going to be and I guess technically Zeldris kind of does get this moment with Percival, but this is what I'm hoping for from every single individual sin. If we're not going to give him, or every single major important character from the previous series, if we aren't going to give him a fighting moment, give him a moment where we get to see their character evolve in a way based on how the character functioned before. And this is just that. Seeing Diane get to play the sweet mother role and do all that she can to save her baby boy. Beautiful. Chef's kiss. No notes. One of my favorite chapters in all of Fortnite so far. Easily a top 10. Arguably a top 5. I love the character work for Myrtle. I love the character work for Diane. I love the character work for King. I even like Kagon being Kagon. But oh yeah. Now I need to see 147 to make sure my other son Sixtus is okay. But amazing chapter. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave sorry mama. Leave sorry mama in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also I do have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the 30-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 Patreon or $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. And if you want to make a one-time donation or a one-time video request, the link to my Ko-Fi is in the description down below. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Diane the Pencil, writing off. I would like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Recliner Plays, Greyhound, Atkins Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Querency Atala, Red Wolf 4765, G Prosper, and Paris Arnold. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Marcus, Kevin, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo and Sick Addiction. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our $10 member, Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patron, ChinaDoll09. And I'd like to give another gargantuan gargantuan I have no idea what that word. Thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.